They got to stop making these John Wick movies. I'm not anti-sequel or even anti-franchise. I'm anti-lore and like backstory, especially with John Wick, because it's one thing if it's like Rocky or Mission Impossible, where it's like every sequel is just, all right, what's Tom Cruise doing now? What's the gang doing? Because that can just be another story. Because those movies are based in what's basically the real world. Whereas John Wick is telling a story of kind of a fantastical universe of the hotel and these killers and like this whole society they have built. But every subsequent movie they make, they have to build the world even more and they have to explain the internal logic of the John Wick universe. The first John Wick movie told you everything you needed to know, just enough to understand what was happening and to tell the story of John Wick, the first movie, which was perfect. If they would have stopped there, nobody left the first John Wick movie thinking like, man, I need to know more about that society. It's like, no, they told you what you needed to know. But the problem is that they couldn't stop there. They had to keep telling you how this world worked. And then now, by this point, they've done so many spin-offs and sequels that the world itself, the internal logic starts to fall apart because this is fantastical. This whole craving for explanation and lore, this becomes most apparent in like horror movies because horror, just as a genre, it relies on tension and release. And over the course of the movie, there's only like certain tentpole parts of the movie, which are, the scary parts. But the whole movie can't be that. So there are going to be these gaps in between tentpoles. And it's a movie, so something has to be happening. So the filmmaker just thinks, all right, exposition time. Time to tell the viewer a bunch of stuff. And the character like finds a book that explains what's happening. Or they pop in a VHS tape and they find out, the backstory of the villain. So you end up with a second act of a movie, which is just an explanation of the first act, and a third act, which resolves the second act. So what starts off being very scary and mysterious, by the end is actually less scary and less mysterious. And usually, because it's horror, kind of absurd. You ever watched Barbarian? Such a good movie for the first 20 minutes or so because you're out of your element. You don't know what's happening and you feel the tension of it. By the end of that movie, you're watching a totally different movie. It becomes wacky and like camp and much less scary, even though there are still like jump scares and stuff happening. But they got greedy. They could have kept that first part going, but they thought, no, these people need a backstory. That movie didn't have a sequel. I don't think they're even planning on it, but I bet that was the logic behind that. Was, if we throw a bunch of extra stuff in, maybe we could squeeze a franchise out of this. All this backstory, it's not serving the actual movie. It's serving, it's a business decision. Let's make a whole fantastical universe out of this, even though it doesn't really need it. And it's not even like it's necessary. I think they think that people want more backstory or they need it. Mad Max Fury Road, perfect. They throw you into that movie. They tell you basically what's happening, and then it's just propulsive from there. Nobody leaves Mad Max Fury Road wanting to look at the Wikipedia or something. It's like, no, they told you every piece of information that you needed and they stopped. I think this is not just about franchises and sequels. This is also just how fandom works these days. Everything needs a podcast. Every show needs an official podcast to go along with it, where the writers and crew walk you through what just happened and tell you what's important and what you need to pay attention to and what you need to think about. because everything needs to be explained. Everything needs a documentary and behind the scenes. This is the worst with the WWE. I don't really watch pro wrestling, but I do check in on it every now and then. Pro wrestling has just been around for too long that the fans are so intense about it that they feel this need to bring you behind the scenes now. Everything in wrestling used to be kayfabe, used to be character. Now, I mean, there is still character, but it's only like 50% of it. Half of wrestling now for fans is like backstage. Sometimes they're in character, sometimes they're not. But everybody is like an insider now. Everybody is like part of the crew. So nobody's, really in the audience engaging with the actual show because everybody's too busy analyzing numbers and analytics or something. I remember when I was in college, I took a short fiction class where everybody, workshop class. You write a short story and you present it to the workshop and people give you feedback. I remember one of the pieces of feedback people would always give. They would read a story and it'd be positive feedback. They would say, "Oh, I like this character, but I want to know more. Tell me more. Well, what's their backstory? What are they about?" And it's like that criticism of "I want to know more." That is something that only exists in the context of a workshop. Because wanting to know more is not a sign that something is lacking. That means that the story made an impact. That means that it triggered something in your imagination and you started thinking about it more than just what's on the page. It's like, yeah, if I wanted you to know more, I would have told you more. Imagine having that feedback for like Hemingway, Old Man in the Sea. It's like, yeah, I want to know more about the old man. It's like, too bad. He told you what you needed to know and he stopped. If he needed to know more, he would have told you more. But that's what makes the story the story. People think that more information is going to increase, immersion, but it doesn't. Imagine if the Bible was twice as long. If the Bible was twice as long, you wouldn't be twice as religious. If anything, you would probably become less religious because you would be thinking about it too much. More information does not lead to belief. It leads to analyzing, which is contradictory to belief. I think people just need to accept the fact that people need to learn to accept ambiguity and learn to appreciate mystery. Because once you think you want to look behind it and you think you want to nail everything down, but you really don't. And when you try to do that, you end up missing out on things. If you ever want to see the most miserable parts of the internet, go to any subreddit for a TV show. This is like a self-selecting group of sad people because they spend their time watching a show again and again and analyzing every aspect of it and wanting for there to be more. They want every question answered. They want every detail nailed down and explained to them. And when they can't find an answer, they make up fantastical theories and they start arguing over that because they can't just appreciate something for what it is. Everything has to be solved. This is pathology. This is a bad way to look at life, just philosophically. And I think a lot of it comes from kind of the modern culture around mental health and therapy, which I guess there are some times when I think it's useful, but one of the problems with therapy as a concept, I think, is it teaches people to see their life as a series of problems to be solved. Here's everything that's wrong with me, let's fix it and let's get it done. When you see life as a series of problems to be solved, you take yourself out of it. And all of a sudden, you're not engaging with it directly. You're trying to get to the end. You're trying to categorize, and you're trying to explain and rationalize everything. But when you do that, you end up losing your life. You're trying to hold water in your hands and it runs away from you. Because when you try to nail down life and you try to explain everything, you lose the sense of mystery. And when you lose mystery, you lose the opportunity for discovery and surprise. Because discovery and surprise, it's what leads to wonder. It's what leads to joy. When you try to nail everything down, it dies and it doesn't hold up to your scrutiny. What I'm really saying here is stop making John Wick movies. How much money do you need?